It's a bit of a challenge when we have colleagues connecting from Caribbean to the Pacific. So thanks for joining, and I'm glad Crystal from OACPS Secretariat is also joined. Good afternoon, Crystal.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
So,
okay.
Thank you. So welcome to the steering committee meeting, which is unfortunately for reasons of the pandemic being held virtually. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your interest and participation in this particular event. And before we start, a couple of quick housekeeping points is that we are recording the session so that it's convenient and easy for us to pick up all the discussions and the points for preparing the report. And I request all the colleagues to mute the microphones. And for those of you who have issues with the bandwidth, maybe except for the couple of minutes where we want to take a group photograph, you're welcome to switch off your videos. So please, please do stay online. So thank you very much, and welcome from UNEP. I've already circulated the agenda for the steering committee meeting. I'm sure you have had a look at it, and thanks to a lot of colleagues for providing their inputs. A quick bit of background before we formally have a welcome session for the steering committee meeting is that this is the second steering committee meeting of the third phase of the ACP MEAs program. And today's session will be chaired by colleagues from the European Union, and the session tomorrow would be chaired by colleagues from the OACPS Secretariat, the Organization for ACP States Secretariats, both based in Brussels. And we are very grateful and happy that all our partners have joined the meeting, and a very special welcome to colleagues from FAO. Thank you very much. It's been a brilliant collaboration having you with us in implementing this very important program in the Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific region. And with that, I would like to essentially request a director of the law division of the UN Environment Program, where this particular program is located, to make some welcome remarks. Patricia Mbote, who actually recently took over as the director of the law division at UNEP, and this program is housed in the law division of UNEP. Over to you, Patricia, for welcome remarks.
Thank you very much, Bala. Distinguished colleagues from the Organization of Africa, Caribbean, and Pacific States Secretariat, the European Commission, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and the United Nations Environment Program, all the partners of the ACP MEAs 3 program. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. On behalf of the United Nations Environment Program, it is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome you all to today's steering committee meeting. Thank you all for joining this virtual meeting. I know that for some of you, this is an odd hour of the day, but we are challenged by the differing time zones from where the partners are joining this meeting. Hope you all understand. You're all aware that currently we are all collectively implementing the third phase of the ACP MEAs 3 program. I wish to thank the European Commission for their continuing support to the program and to the long work of building and enhancing the capacities of ACP countries to comply with and implement multilateral environmental agreements. This phase of the program is crucial for us to consolidate the gains and experiences since 2009 when the program began. I am glad to note that the program is currently focusing on critical issues of environmental governance, including ocean governance and issues of agriculture. The lessons learned and outcomes from this phase of the program are important for us in UNEP as we are beginning to implement our new medium-term strategy for the period 2022 to 2025. We are keen to internalize the outcomes of this program. This steering committee meeting provides us with insights of the status of implementation of the 3 components of ACP MEAs program. that is enforcement and compliance of MEAs related to biodiversity, chemicals and waste, effective implementation of regional SACE conventions, and mainstreaming of biodiversity in agriculture. Distinguished delegates, the COVID-19 pandemic has had its impacts on the implementation of the activities of the program. As the pandemic has held the world in its grip, we've been forced to think out of the box and develop new ways of working. The stakeholders are now devising new ways of implementing, including use of virtual meetings to replace face-to-face trainings and minimize any further delays in the execution of activities. For UNEP, the engagement of the stakeholders is a key element for success, and the feedback from them will be used to improve our work now and in the future. We will develop ways to enhance synergistic approaches in the implementation of the various activities, improve the coordination among the three components of the program, and enhance communication to increase impacts both at the national and regional level of the ACP region. Looking back, I am pleased to know that despite various challenges during the past years, we all have collectively worked to implement the activities agreed to in the program when it was signed in 2019. The spirit of collaboration and interest from the partners in maximizing the outputs and their impacts has been tremendous. Thanks to all of you for your support. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to reiterate UNEP's continued unwavering commitment and support for the program. As the coordinator and facilitator of the activities, UNEP will be working closely with its partners, doing its utmost to ensure positive and sustainable results across the ACP region for the third phase of the program. I thank you all once again for joining the meeting, and I look forward to the discussions and the outcomes of the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Thanks for your welcome remarks. And now I'd like to invite our most important partner in implementing this particular program, colleague from the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, Mr. Rashid Al-Kafaji. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It's my pleasure to address this meeting and deliver opening remarks on behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization. Allow me to begin by highlighting that the ACP MEAs program is fully aligned with its new strategy and its strategic framework that focuses on making agri-food systems more efficient, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable for better production, better environment, better nutrition, and a better life, leaving no one behind. It is worth highlighting that the program is well underway with the national work plans validated in each of the 6 focus countries: Niger, Rwanda, St. Lucia, Solomon Islands, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. The ACP MEAs recognize the importance of the synergetic implementation of chemical and biodiversity clusters, multilateral environmental agreements. That is of particular importance to low and middle income countries where human and financial resources are limited. In this context, 2022 and 2023, the next 2 years, will be crucial years, with the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework expected to be adopted at CBD COP15, whilst the post-2020 approach for the management of chemicals has been scheduled for adoption during the 5th session of the International Conference on Chemicals Management, ICCM5, which will most likely take place mid-2023. Preparations are also in full swing for the upcoming seminar on strengthening regulations to protect pollinators from pesticides. This seminar comes at an opportune time as the European Commission is considering the scope for revising its EU Pollinators initiative. The seminar will contribute to improving knowledge of pollinator decline as a result of pesticide application in agriculture, and to providing regulatory options to better protect pollinators from pesticides, which are 2 of the 3 priorities of the EU Pollinators initiative. Crucially, the ACP MEAs reinforce FAO's priority to assist the least developed countries, the landlocked countries, and the small islands development states. Most of them member states of the OACPS, remarked, alongside other FAO flagship initiatives, such as the Hand in Hand Initiative, the SIT Solution Forum, the Green Cities, and others. Ladies and gentlemen, rest assured that the Brussels office here will continue to provide support at our level, and that FAO will continue to be your trusted partner in this. I thank you all for your attention and wish this meeting all the success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Al-Kafaji. Thanks for your reassuring words. And certainly the third objective of this particular program is so very crucial and critical for the success of the overall implementation and achieving the impacts that we intend to achieve when the program was designed in 2018 and 2019. Thank you very much. I'd like to invite the Honorable Assistant Secretary General of the Organization for Africa, Caribbean and Pacific State Secretariat, Ms. Crystal Pratt, to provide her welcome remarks. Crystal, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Bala. Can everybody hear me? Just nod.
Yes.
Bala?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All protocols observed. I'd like to wish everybody participating in this virtual meeting a very good day, because I realise it might be in the middle of the day, it might be in the evening, it might be in the morning. So good day to you all. I'm honoured to, on behalf of the OACPS, to make just some very brief remarks during the second programme steering committee meeting for the ACP MEA 3 programme. And so I'd like to start by expressing first my sincere appreciation to all ACP MEA 3 programme partners, starting of course with the European Union and the OACPS, and our technical implementing partners, UNEP and FAO, as well as regional agencies in the 6 regions across the OACPS. I wish you, sincere appreciation really for the dedicated and determined efforts to build capacity of the 79 member states of the OACPS, and in particular to build that capacity to fulfil their obligations as parties to the various multilateral environmental governance frameworks. Without exception, the OACPS countries do face serious environmental challenges, and that many of these have driven and drive the global biodiversity crisis, and has occasioned really unprecedented levels of biodiversity loss and alarming rates of ecosystem degradation. And so we are looking to the third phase of the ACP MEA program to be able to address the environmental challenges faced by our members, and at the same time build their capacity to reap the benefits of improved environmental governance at national and regional levels. The program is also uniquely placed to play a visible role in the lead up to COP15, as has already been mentioned by previous speakers, and this particular and important COP to take place next year. And for, I understand, parties, hopefully all parties, to be able to meet in Kunming, China. Why? To be able to agree on ambitious goals and targets for the sustainable use and conservation of biodiversity, including the equitable sharing of biological genetic resources, but all of this under the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So besides delivering on the program objectives, the OACPS would like to underline the need for the program activities to OACPS and states, to put ownership of the program by the beneficiaries and regional partners, and 3, to take actions to ensure the sustainability and utility of the project activities We all recognise that the third phase of the ACP MEA3 programme, now in its second year of implementation, has been affected by the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. So whichever part of the OACPS regions in lockdown, travel restrictions, and these are becoming a part of our new order to be able to address and manage the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. While also trying to get on with and this has, had consequences with delays, but it has also encouraged innovation and initiative, and I think that we should congratulate all of those participating in implementation on finding these various innovations and initiatives to progress implementation. This particular meeting affords us a bit of an opportunity to take stock of the past program activities and the lessons learned and to take important decisions to guide next year's work program and further to re-look at the program activities and their related budgets and take useful decisions to ensure that the program objectives are achieved, but within, of course, the current constraints and context that I've already mentioned. We've got a really comprehensive agenda over the next few days. I really thank UNEP, Bala, as well as FAO colleagues for pulling together a comprehensive agenda, which all makes logical sense in terms of sequencing. And so we of the OACPS really look forward to the exchanges over the next few days, and in particular fruitful outcomes that we can all work towards and work on to meet the program objectives. So I'll stop there, but thank you for this opportunity to make these remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite our colleague from INPA, European Union, who's been kind of guiding the implementation of this particular program since its beginning, Ms. Godefroy Aurélie. Over to you, Aurélie.
Thank you very much, Bala. Can you hear me? Yes, huh?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to you all. Indeed, this project committee is taking place at a very important moment and also during challenging times. The COVID crisis is putting a lot of pressure on our economies, on our societies, on our resilience, individual and collective. At the same time, we are facing this planetary crisis, global warming, biodiversity loss, and worrying pollution level. You all know the figures. I'm not going to repeat them, but these are very important times. And we are just back from the two COPs, Biodiversity COP15 and Climate COP26, with some achievements, but also with a lot of remaining challenges. You know that the European Union has put together a very ambitious strategy, the European Green Deal. It's our plan to tackle the three crises, biodiversity, climate, and pollution, with very clear objectives. So we committed to climate neutrality. We are also committed to halt biodiversity loss and reverse the trend, and committed to zero pollution. So three strong engagement. And doing that while creating jobs and leaving no one behind. So how we're going to do that? Basically the strategy is about transforming economies and societies, all sectors of the economy, so be it energy, to go towards clean energy and clean and sustainable energy, agriculture, to transform our food systems, to make them more sustainable, industry, to move toward circular and climate neutral economies, but also looking at taxation, at research, as education, so all the sectors that can contribute to this transition. And so how to do that? To do that, we of course are passing laws, so new legal frameworks, improving regulations, and also through finance. And so I'm pleased to share with you the fact that this Green Deal has already 2 years old, and has contributed to the adoptions of more than 20 policy documents, some of them very important regulations. You may have seen recently the adoption on a regulation on deforestation, which is a major innovation that will prevent commodities to enter the EU market if they are related to deforestation. That's just an example. So laws, of course, but also funds, and you might be aware that we will dedicate 30% of our funds, and even more, because now our president has increased the target, so we will dedicate 35% of our funds to climate action. And our president has also committed to double our financing for biodiversity. So we were already a big contributor. And from now to the next year, 7 years, we will double our funds for biodiversity. So with these funds and with these policies, we aim to support our partners across the globe to also go towards a greener and more inclusive development. And we are pleased to see, because we are starting now our programming, so the new strategic framework of our program for the years to come. And we see that our partners are very interested by this green recovery. This is basically what this program is about, our MEA program. I'm very pleased that it's part of the pieces of the puzzle that we put together to support our partners. So now we need to look at how we can really support this change at national level, at local level, how we can make a difference, how we can bring innovation to scale, how we go from commitment to action, how we go from law to implementation and enforcement. So I really look forward to hear from you about your achievements, about future plans as well. I really sincerely invite you to be concrete and also point out opportunities and challenges and also difficulties, as mentioned by Christelle Pratt, because we need to have a good picture of where we stand and make sure we are on the right track and adapt if necessary. Thank you very much, and thanks Bala for all the organization as well.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Early. Pleasure, and certainly thank you very much for the guidance and support thus far. And just to remind all the participants at this particular steering committee meeting that the steering committee meeting is the governing body for this particular program, where the members of the steering committee, essentially the European Union, FAO, and colleagues from the OACPS Secretariat, are sort of convening to look at the progress that has been made, both in terms of the technical progress as well as the financial elements related to implementation of the program thus far, but also to remind us all that the steering committee meeting is the platform for taking decisions, making suggestions and recommendations. So certainly I did sort of connected with all of you individually, collectively, regionally, to make the presentations as sharp as possible, and more specifically to seek that kind of a decision from the project steering committee meeting in case if there are suggestions for changes to the work plan or the related budgets. So just a reminder that the steering committee is the most important body to agree and to make recommendations and also decide on the future course of action based on the achievements and by different partners of implementation. So having said that, thank you very much. So we will now move to the formal part of the steering committee, where we will be having some presentations from various partners on the progress made thus far and also plans for the future. But maybe I would like to request your indulgence for a small ceremonial element. If all of you can switch on your cameras, maybe we'll just take a quick photograph because we are not meeting physically. So we would like to take a photograph. It won't take more than a minute or two. So all our colleagues are helping us to do that. And then immediately after that, we will sort of start the presentation. So thank you very much for your cooperation. So if all of you can switch on the cameras, that will be extremely helpful. I mean, looking at all the colleagues, you know how much we miss the in-person meetings. Good. Yes, Ladu, you can confirm once you take the snap so that we can start the presentations. Good. Okay. Thanks a lot, colleagues. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And then we will move to the formal part of the steering committee meeting. And just before we start, I'd like to, as I mentioned, we'll give the chair position to Orly. You will be chairing today's session. So Orly, over to you if you would like to take over and conduct the meeting.
Thank you very much, Bella. Happy to your host. So I propose we go to the adoption of the agenda. I think there's no objection. And so if there's no objection, we can move directly to the progress presentations. And the first briefing is ACP MEA program, achievements and lessons learned. Please, Bala, I think it's the floor is yours.
Sure. Yeah, just give me a second so that I'll start sharing the presentation just to ensure that. Yeah, I just can you see the presentation, Lovely?
Yes, all fine.
Perfect. Okay. Good. Thanks a lot, and certainly a great pleasure, and certainly a big responsibility in terms of UNEP to be overall coordinating and implementing this particular phase of the program. And as it was mentioned during the opening remarks, it's a very critical phase for the program, not only in terms of being the second year that we are reviewing the progress, but also the challenges in terms of implementation due to various issues, including the pandemic and things like that. And what I'd like to do in the next 15 minutes, as quickly as possible, will be to provide you a kind of a snapshot of the implementation and the progress that this particular program has made. Looking at it from the UNEP component of it, even though UNEP actually manages the overall program, but UNEP also has some elements that UNEP is responsible as a part of the overall program. So I'll be focusing more on UNEP related activities, and certainly we will have follow-up presentations from all the other partners, including colleagues from FAO. Having said that, a quick review for those of the colleagues who are relatively new or who joined first time for this steering committee meeting. The program supports the multilateral environmental agreements related to biodiversity and chemicals and waste, which is the first objective for the strategic program 1. The second one is strengthening issues of ocean governance, where we work with the regional seas programs in all the 3 regions, Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific. And the third one, where our colleagues from FAO are implementing activities related to mainstreaming of biodiversity and of the sound management of chemicals and waste. And I'm sure you're aware that the member states from the Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific regions, we have 79 countries. And this is being done with guidance and partnership of European Commission, the OACPS Secretariat, UNEP, and FAO. A very quick overview. And with respect to the UNEP overall focal areas, so the result areas, there are 4 overarching areas that UNEP is responsible implementing a number of actions. One is related to enhancing capacity, processes, and infrastructure to enforce and comply with a select number of multilateral environmental agreements related to biodiversity, chemicals, and waste. The second 1.2 is improved national frameworks, legislations, and mechanisms for effective implementations of MEAs related to biodiversity, chemicals, and waste, which is more working at the national level and local level. Improved knowledge sharing, guidelines, and mechanisms for effective implementation of MEAs related to biodiversity, effective communications, outreach, awareness raising, and also increasing the stakeholder engagement, including political will among the decision makers. And for those of you who have read the project document, one of the critical elements in terms of the stakeholder engagement very specifically mentioned in this particular phase of the ACP MEAs program is engagement with the local stakeholders, essentially the civil society organizations, the youth, the women's group, and girls. So that's been kind of an overall priority. What I intend to do is not to take you activity by activity because of lack of time, but my presentation will more focus on an overall strategic position on this program that UNEP is attempting to achieve. And certainly a very quick snapshot of a select number of activities that were implemented during the reporting period. This is support to a reporting tool that UNEP is leading in terms of data management and reporting related to the Biodiversity Convention, the Convention on Biological Diversity, translating into different languages, essentially French and Spanish. Support to countries, including in preparation for and during the negotiations of the Bamako Conference of Parties and related follow-up. Preparations for technical inputs into the CBD's post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, where we focused on a number of elements related to the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing, focusing on synergies among the biodiversity-related multilateral environmental agreements, as well as synergies between biodiversity and the chemical cluster MEAs. On issues of communication, youth engagement, and also helping countries raise their voice and improve their effectiveness of participation in many of these governing body meetings, essentially the scientific body meetings and the Conference of Parties, through a number of negotiation preparations and related. During the period, we also supported 8 countries in the IGAD region in East Africa and strategic preparations for positioning the countries in the region for the negotiations related to the post-2020 framework, but also anticipate the outcome of this relates to mainstreaming activities once the framework has been adopted during the Conference of Parties, the 15 meetings of the COP, and also support to preparations of the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm Conventions COP meetings. Also support BRS Secretariat in providing inputs on a report, technical report on the linkages between the biodiversity MEAs and the chemicals MEAs, and looking at the synergies between these two clusters. Organization of a number of activities for parliamentarians, discussions with the Interparliamentary Union and also colleagues from the CBD Secretariat, support for implementation of the Cartagena Protocol on Biosafety, where more specifically we've been focusing on an emerging issue within that discussions under the Cartagena Protocol related to an area called synthetic biology. So we've been sort of closely working with the Convention Secretariat on that, and also support youth, media and journalists for CBD COP15. Having said that, I'd like to sort of very quickly take a minute each to provide you a kind of a number of cross-cutting or an overarching issues that we were able to address during this particular reporting period on a number of those issues that are outlined on the slide. Youth engagement, working with the small island developing states in terms of finding links between the ACP MEAs program and the Samoa pathway. As many of you know, it's a very, very important programmatic framework for countries in Caribbean, Pacific, and also in Africa. South-South cooperation, gender, policy briefs already mentioned about the new Green Deal. So we did launch a policy brief on translating the elements of the Green Deal into considerations within the region and at the national levels through a first policy brief that has been prepared through this particular program from UNEP. Communication outreach, reach out to other regions other than ACP, and I'll mention that briefly in a minute. Internalizing the program within UNEP as well, because that's also something which we find is extremely important for sustainability and also having a larger impact, not to see this. And that's why intentionally, we started using the word program than a project. And I'm glad that a lot of people have started using that program, because we want to have a programmatic approach to this entire thing, work with OACPS Secretariat and also links with other programs. Very quickly on youth engagement during this year, we were quite happy and fortunate that we were able to launch a fairly successful youth engagement and training initiative, where we developed a strategy for youth, and already we have rolled out the first batch of training 32 youth from Africa through an intense 4-month mentorship program, focusing on issues of preparing youth for contributing to the elements of the post-2020 framework related to contributing to the CBD COP15 meeting. We also organized a youth summit on biodiversity with colleagues from various different regions, including Asia, in preparation for the 3rd working group meeting in Colombia during May. Then we also have now recruited a dedicated youth intern, where she is actually working on currently to roll out this particular youth engagement program in other regions, starting with Europe, but also for Pacific and also the Caribbean regions. We also have internalized this with discussions within UNEP because, as you know, UNEP also has a strong focus on children and youth engagement in preparing for UNEA, the UN Environment Assembly 5.2 meeting, and also UNEP at 50 meeting, where very specifically youth inputs have been considered as a part of UNEP's preparation for these meetings, and also supported a model conference of parties for youth organized by WWF International. In terms of the small island developing states, the idea behind having this particular focus is 35 of the 79 countries that we work on are the small island developing states. So being, in the next, it's not 2014, apologies, it's 2024, 10 years of Samoa that will be celebrated in 2024. We thought that the program could significantly contribute to that. So we actually have now prepared a strategic framework on how this particular program can contribute to that. We will have a short presentation of it tomorrow. We're also working with the UN DESA in terms of their own focus on supporting SIDS and related activities. So this is more a kind of a cross-cutting element of it. Gender considerations, we have taken it extremely seriously. We actually had a gender operational plan that was discussed with all the partners before it was launched on 8th of May to commemorate the International Day for Women, and also contributed to the CBD's gender action plan in support of the post-2020 framework. And we had discussions with our partners in terms of mainstreaming gender across the different elements of the programs that are being implemented, with an intention to review and monitor the gender actions through annual reports and the revision of the operational plans, if possible, on a yearly basis. So request has been made, including from within UNEP, also for all the partners to have a very specific focus on issues related to gender. Currently, we are working on a South-South cooperation element of it because the countries belonging to these three regions are from the South. So the program is more looking at how do we enhance the South-South cooperation. We are currently working on a short operational strategy for how ACP MEAs can contribute to the South-South Action Plan, the Buenos Aires Plan of Action that now is under preparation. And we're very glad that all our partners have also seriously taken this particular request or this particular issue as a core to their implementation. For example, we had the SPREP, the Secretariat for the Pacific Regional Environment Program, organizing a third Pacific Regional Clean Air Roundtable, where we had colleagues from Caribbean and Africa participate in the roundtable, but also a number of activities in support of cross-regional exchange of knowledge and information, and also exploring opportunities to work with other regional hubs, SPREP for the Pacific, CARICOM for the Caribbean, and African Union Commission for Africa. And the policy brief I mentioned, it's under a theme called Build Back Better series. So the first one were focused on the issue of the New Deal, that is directly linking to the European New Green Deal that already mentioned. And we are now currently beginning to work on the second policy brief, which will be released in 2022 on the future of ocean governance that also looks at issues of blue economy. Communications outreach, a number of partnerships have been established, including work with the Africa Network of Environmental Journalists. So we organized at least 3 sessions of briefing for the journalists, 800 journalists as a part of the network on different elements of chemicals, biodiversity. Thanks to colleagues from the secretariats for serving as resource persons for these. We also have a dedicated intern working with us on the contributions of indigenous people and local communities in terms of supporting activities related to the program. New approaches to social media. We have now have a very strong presence in the social media space, including using Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all of them, working with partners. We'll also be launching a new website in the next coming days. We are waiting for a formal approval from our UNEP communications team to launch it. It's a new website where we are also providing space for all the partners to also use the website for uploading their programs, results, and all that. And of course, we also are directly linking with UNEP communications internally through the WhatsApp group and UNEP highlights, and also partnership with the Interparliamentary Union for engaging with the parliamentary for parliamentarians. Extending cooperation to Asia, because some of the activities cut across the interests of not just the ACP regions, but also to others. So in discussion with colleagues from EU and OACPS, we were able to reach out to colleagues such as from Asia on a number of these activities, including the regional preparatory events for the CBD, SUBSTA, SBI, and the working group meetings. And just about 10 days ago, we actually supported a capacity building program for the Gulf Cooperation Council regions on the issue of global biodiversity framework on the Nagoya Protocol, and also intending to have a launch of the youth mentorship program in UNEP. Internalizing within UNEP, we actually have looked at a number of these opportunities, including support to the African group of negotiators, looking at the medium-term strategy of UNEP in mainstreaming, and most importantly, linking the recommendations that had come out of the ministerial meetings of the African region and also the Latin America region, AMSEN and the FEMLAC regions, where we now have already developed a kind of a linkages document of how the ACP MEAs program can contribute to the outcomes and the recommendations of these ministerial meetings. So ideally, these are some of the activities we are trying to put together to internalize the elements of this program within UNEP. Linking with other European Union programs, a number of them, I don't want to go into all of them, the Informia program, the Post-Global Biodiversity Partnership, work with the World Conservation Congress, inputs to European Development Days, the BioPharma program, the DART. So a number of these issues are now have already been implemented, but the last point on linking ACP MEAs with the elements of circular economy and nature-based solution is something which we'll be focusing on 2022. OACPS Secretariat, we have had a brilliant and wonderful cooperation, thanks to both Ms. Crystal Pratt and Peter Vekesa for their encouraging support. Had a briefing for the subcommittee on sustainable development on issues of biosafety, and for the first time we were able to support the OACPS Secretariat to realize the first ministerial resolution, a first ever ministerial resolution on biodiversity, and also considerations for operationalizing some elements of the resolution as well. A number of other collaborations, as you can see, working with the Digital Transformation Task Force of UNEP, looking at the synergies between biodiversity, chemicals cluster, a policy brief, as I mentioned, on circular economy and nature-based solutions linked to the CBD frameworks on issues of synthetic biology, the digital sequence informations, and things like that. Future plans is to work on some with the CBD Secretariat essentially, but we are planning to extend it to the other MEAs also, or regional hubs on capacity development, technology transfer, and knowledge management, partnering with the regional hubs in implementing the BioBridge initiative of the CBD, because CBD has asked the program to look at the possibility of helping the Secretariat to implement the BioBridge initiative, the second phase of it, then negotiation preparations for member states to continue, and as I mentioned, the digital transformation essentially in the preparation for the national biodiversity strategies and action plans and national reports and implementation of the frameworks. I mean, of course, it does say about the post-2020 framework related to biodiversity, but we will certainly be focusing on the post-2020 frameworks related to the chemicals MEAs as well. Some very specific sub-regional training programs to look at an integrated approach for MEAs and SDGs, national workshops in the IGAT regions based on the reports that documents that have been produced, workshops on mapping national legal frameworks and institutional capacities, technical and methodological assistance, including to MEA secretariats on issues such as small and artisanal, small-scale gold mining, building capacities of national focal points towards 2020 and beyond. That includes biodiversity and chemicals cluster, looking at validating and supporting the implementation of the access and benefit sharing strategies, using the national reporting tools much more effectively, having some dialogues with the decision makers on key elements related to biosafety and biodiversity, which is already a part of an approved program under this particular program, and also building the cooperation for CMS. And also on access and benefit sharing to look at the clearinghouse mechanism, consultative meetings in ACP on the multilateral environmental agreements, and workshop on to gather information on sound management of chemicals in Africa. So these are all a part of the work program that has been a part of the 2022 work plan. So the key asks from the program steering committee is inputs on strategic and cross-cutting issues, whether we are on the right track, and any suggestions or modifications you would like to suggest. Looking at the financial management, we've already submitted a request for the second installment now to the EU for release. The third point is budget consolidation and review of planned activities in light of activities that were implemented or the savings we have made in 2021 and 2020, and new and additional activities in light of the unspent budget, both UNEP component, regional hubs and other partners. So I'll stop there and thank you very much, Aruli.
Thank you very much, Bala. That was very comprehensive and you had to go very fast.
Sorry about that.
Do we have an opportunity to take a few questions already?
No, sure, from my side. Yes.
Any questions from partners or colleagues? You just raise your hand if you want, using the little button, or just take the floor. Christelle.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take too long, but just really to thank Bala for trying to compress a lot of information into such a short time. Quite an impressive suite of activities and initiatives over the past 2 years, and in particular, I guess, for the last 12 months, where implementation has really increased in its intensity. I was interested, really. I mean, I've got quite a number of questions, and we can take quite a number of them, if you like, Bala, offline, as we often do. But I was taken by the International Parliamentary Union and your mention of that particular activity, and just wanted to know, really whether you've considered a joint. Under the EU-OACPS, there is a joint institution, the Joint Parliamentary Assembly, as well as our own Parliamentary Assembly. And I was just sort of wondering a little bit more, as to what the approach and the ambition is in that regard, noting that there could be opportunities there, in terms of how you work with 79 members of the OACPS and then 27 of the European Union before you move to the much more global level. So that's if you like, a much more specific question. And I wanted to just also qualify one metric that you used, and that is, in fact, the OACPS has 38 small island developing states. We pretty much have the lion's share of global SIDS. In fact, all of our members are members of AOSIS, apart from, they have one more, which is not a member, and that's Singapore. And then we have one that isn't generally recognised in other groupings, SIDS groupings, and that is Madagascar, which is, quite unique, but nevertheless, it is an island state and it is a developing state. So I just wanted to rectify that, but just the specific question on using kind of parliamentarians and the parliamentary process for advocacy and engagement and amplification. And then, of course, there's a couple of other questions, but they can wait. Thank you.
Can I answer?
Thanks. Yes, please, Bella.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Crystal. I think that's an important question, because honestly, I was not aware of the EU-OACPS Joint Parliamentary Assembly. So apologies. So certainly it's a good learning. And what's being discussed is as follows. Is that a colleague, Neil Pratt from CBD Secretariat, is online, but he'll be making a presentation tomorrow. One of the things that has happened significantly over the last 2 conferences of parties, at least, has been the collaborations with the Balanced Environment, and also IPU, the Interparliamentary Union. So UNEP actually has an MOU with IPU, and UNEP has been working through the law division on a number of activities related to climate change. And we realized that we never had any opportunity to have an engagement with the Interparliamentary Union to work on issues of biodiversity. And that is why when I reached out to IPU through colleagues in UNEP, in terms of exploring the possibility of a similar engagement, like what's being done for climate change for biodiversity. So essentially, the response has been quite positive and very encouraging. But then the question they raised was, should the parliamentarians be engaged after the framework has been adopted? Because to an extent, they are more focusing on implementation rather than on shaping the elements of the framework, because that is more or less done by the executive, by the different ministries and all. But then we had a discussion with them and suggested that, yes, they are important for implementation, but certainly they are also important to basically provide inputs to the national preparations as and when these frameworks gets discussed and negotiated, for which they actually have agreed. And unfortunately, we couldn't sort of really find a time slot to start that particular set of activities. And the idea is we will do at least 3 regional events in collaboration with the Interparliamentary Union in terms of their reaching out to the parliamentarians through a note that will be prepared, and UNEP will be organizing these events. But with this information you have provided, Crystal, in terms of the assembly that is already available, it is critical, and I'll certainly ensure that we reach out to that particular network and that particular group of people through you and early in terms of ensuring that we connect with them. And the idea of engagement is very simple, is to let them know what are the key issues that are under discussion and what are the key expectations from these kinds of governing body meetings like the COP, and then seek their inputs, not only in terms of communicating, but also in terms of influencing the national positions to the extent possible and relevant. Thank you.
If I may, Chair, just add one more thing, just to let you know that in fact the Joint Parliamentary Assembly did release a declaration just on climate. It was a special session of the JPA. And there was a declaration on climate action at COP26. And so I think, as you outlined, Bala, these are various opportunities that we should be thinking about, in terms of advocacy and engagement. Thank you.
Good. No, certainly. I mean, I'll reach out to you and I'll be guided by both you and Aurelie on that. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And just to confirm also from our side that we very much support the work with the parliamentarian. I think we had discussed it also with the youth. A lot of support also for all your work to create synergies, both within UNEP and also with other programs. This is extremely important. And of course, not to forget the gender aspect, which is dear to our hearts. So on this, I would propose that we move to the second presentation. I will leave the floor to my colleague of FAO, Ms. Tempelman, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will just try to share my screen. Do you see my screen or?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yes, it's here.
It's there?
Yes.
Okay, I only see it in a very small. Let me try to increase. Not very familiar with Teams. Sorry about that.
For us, it's okay.
For you,
but,
it's okay. Yes, I
can
can't
click
see
on.
Sorry, I'm just trying to shut. Lado, would you know how I could increase the screen also on my side? Sorry about this.
You have two ways. Either you do slideshow, and if already done, on the top of your screen you have a display setting. Okay, now do you still see the screen? We see you on the screen.
Okay, then I'll okay, I see it as well. So I hope it will work with the with moving forward. Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a pleasure for FAO to be here. I'm here with my colleagues, and we are happy to be here, and thank you, Balakrishna, for the organization of this meeting. And without further ado, I would like to briefly share our achievements and lessons learned over the past year. Just a very quick overview. FAO is one of the 4 program partners of the ACP MEAs 3. And as Balakrishna already mentioned in his introduction, FAO is responsible for the implementation of the program's 3rd specific objective, which is about enhancing the mainstreaming of biodiversity and the sound management of chemicals and waste in agriculture, in line with the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Basel, Rotterdam, Stockholm Chemical Conventions. So under our component, we have activities at national, regional and global levels. And we are operational in 6 focus countries, which are Niger, Rwanda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, St. Lucia and the Solomon Islands. And we've also identified and validated 19 countries for expansion and replication of good practices. So very rapidly, the activities in a snapshot. We still had some activities that we needed to complete that were related to the inception phase of the program.
The slides is not changed. Yeah, no change regarding the slides.
Okay, because it's changing here. Yes?
Actually, I can move them myself.
Okay.
Under the presentation, there is the number of slides and with arrows, and you can navigate forward.
Okay, do you see my 3rd slide, Inception Phase?
Yes, I can see it, but I don't know if others see the same as I do.
We can see slide 3 of 15.
Okay.
So I just move it.
Okay.
For you.
Okay, then I'll
just say next slide and then move.
Okay, so now I'm on the 3rd slide, right?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, okay. You can go ahead. We can see you. Go ahead, Cameron.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So regarding the inception phase, so we now have our program management team in place. In our 6 focus countries, we've hired national coordinators, and we've also held multi-stakeholder planning workshops to introduce the program and fine-tune national work plans. And these national work plans have been validated by each focus country, giving them ownership of the work plan. We've also defined regional work plans with our regional partners, and some of these have involved also institutional arrangements. And finally, we have developed communication and visibility plans, and I will get back to that at a later slide. Christine, is it possible to move to the next slide, please?
Yes, done.
Thanks. So activities in relation to output 1, national level activities to integrate biodiversity and sound chemical management into national agricultural policies. So we formed multi-sectoral project technical units, and we've held meetings with them, and detailed action plans were elaborated, obviously based on the national validated work plans. We've identified national institutions with whom we will collaborate and are actually already collaborating. And LOAs have been negotiated, and some of them have been signed, others are on the signature. We've hired national consultants in support of the program's biodiversity policy work and institutional capacity building activities. And we've also put a lot of emphasis on regularly liaising with EU delegations in the focus countries. Next slide, please. In terms of field implementation, so we followed up on the...
No change of the slides, here. No change of the slides.
Christine, did you change the slide?
I changed, it's slide number 5, output 2, field
yes,
implementation. Right. Yes.
Excellent. Yeah. So in terms of field implementation, we've followed up on the implementation of the national pesticide risk reduction plans that were developed under the previous phase of the program. We've identified also there national institutions for collaborations. We've also hired national consultants to strengthen extension services, extension curricula, including in support of farmer field school activities. We've tried to build on synergy and complementarities with other FAO farming community capacity building projects, and farmer field school activities have initiated. And also we have recruited and are still recruiting in some of the focus countries videographers to shoot baseline videos on sound pesticide management and environmental friendly production practices and approaches that are promoted under the project. Next slide, please, Christine.
Yeah.
Regarding regional level activities, we have provided and are providing support to the EAC, so the Eastern African Community and the Southern African Development Community, regarding the implementation of regional guidelines on pesticide management.
I think we lost. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Arlie, just cannot hear
So
lost her.
and yes.
Yeah.
I can hear you, but I think we lost
Her.
Kim on.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're back. Yes.
Okay. Oh, what a disaster. Anyway, so I'm not sure. So we're here on the regional collaboration slide. So I was mentioning that we are supporting the Eastern African Community and the Southern African Development Community in implementing their regional guidelines on pesticide management and the drafting of regional highly hazardous pesticide reduction strategies. I think there's some interference, but I'll move on.
Yes, I ask again to all participants which are not speaking, please mute yourself so that we can hear properly the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Regarding the preparation for CBD COP15 and the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework.
I think
It
we
seems you
seem.
muted yourself. Kim, did you mute yourself?
Yes.
I don't know why this happens. I don't click on anything. It just.
Okay, please go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. And we've also prepared studies for awareness raising on threats to ecosystems and sustainable production. And we've held regional technical working group meetings on existing legislation to protect pollinators from pesticides and on pesticide risk assessment and mitigation methodologies for pollinators. Next slide, please, Christine.
Yes, it's there.
So finally, regarding global activities, yes. So we've organized together with our colleagues from the Rotterdam Convention a side event on finding alternatives to highly hazardous pesticides, where we shared country experiences from African, Caribbean and Pacific countries. Then we are in full preparation for the global seminar on strengthening regulations to protect pollinators from pesticides. And to this end, as I just mentioned, we held regional technical working group meetings for pesticide regulators and biodiversity experts. We've organized regional webinars and technical sessions so to prepare countries and regions for CBD COP. And we've initiated discussions with regional partners and the CBD Secretariat for the preparation of a cross-regional technical guidance on integrated agricultural systems for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And finally, we have worked on the highly hazardous pesticides baseline study. We have collected data for that. We've begun with the analysis. We're now cross-checking, and this publication is expected to be ready early next year. Next slide, please. So in terms of other global level activities, we've supported FAO's corporate activities as they relate to sound pesticide and biodiversity management. So we've led the preparation of the FAO vision paper, also with the strong support from the colleagues from the Rotterdam Convention for public consultation on the EU Pesticide Directive. We've participated in the EU-FAO strategic dialogue with the thematic session being Food Systems and One Health. We were involved in the organization of the global dialogue that FAO organized on the role of food and agriculture in the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. We provided inputs to UNEP study report on strengthening coordination and collaboration between biodiversity and chemicals and waste clusters. And we've also contributed to FAO's intervention at the 2021 Farm to Fork conference. Next slide, please. In terms of communication and visibility, so as I previously mentioned, we've developed global and national level plans. We've published a ACP MEAs 3 brochure in both English and French. We've launched a website in October, and we also produced the first newsletter, and the second edition is on the way. And we are currently developing a visual identity for our publications to have a visual identity. Next slide, please. In terms of gender equality and the empowerment of women and youth, so obviously in agriculture, so rural women and men together hold the keys to ending hunger and extreme poverty. And so what we've done in the different stages of the work planning, like the national consultations we held and the design and implementation of our activities, we've integrated gender and youth perspectives in support of policy actions and field work. We've also undertaken stakeholder analyses to produce gender and youth differentiated data and information that is critical to evidence-based policy development. Next slide, please. Regarding challenges encountered and lessons learned. So first, the use of virtual meetings. Although they are very useful, particularly under the current circumstances on the COVID-19, we did come to the conclusion that they cannot always replace face-to-face meetings. And here I am particularly referring to working group meetings, like we had technical meetings, and these meetings require interaction, and it's simply it is more difficult to undertake these type of activities. Also, our government counterparts and other stakeholders have been affected by the lack of IT equipment and access to affordable and stable internet. And so this has led to sometimes, unfortunately, poor participation or compromised audio quality. Also, virtual meetings, while they allow us to work across different time zones, they also lead to extended work days, and this can be quite heavy on all of us. And then also we've noticed that there's some virtual meeting fatigue among our stakeholders, and that it takes some effort to keep people motivated. Other challenges encountered related to COVID-19 were restrictions on travel and gathering. We have started, for example, to implement our farmer field school activities. We've had to postpone these travels sometimes because of changing rules and regulations. And so we have relied a lot on virtual tools and hybrid solutions. And finally, and I think this is one of the main challenges we have been facing, are the cash flow challenges. Due to ongoing negotiations at corporate level between the European Commission and FAO regarding project-related costs, we have received no funds in year 2. And this has inevitably led to delays in the implementation of activities. And funding for year 3 is not yet available. Next slide, please. So as to our main objective for 2022, it is obviously to support countries and regions to implement the ACP MEAs 3 program based on the national and regional work plans that we have. So next slide, please. So regarding the work plans for the next period, so my colleagues will provide more detailed information under the different regional presentations. So I will focus on the work plan for the next period on output 4, which relates to global level activities. So as previously mentioned, we will be finalizing the highly hazardous pesticide baseline study. We will be organizing a global seminar on strengthening pesticide regulations to protect pollinators on 23 and 24 February. We intend to publish 2 global reviews in relation to this global seminar, one on existing legislation to protect pollinators from pesticides in selected countries, and another on the review of approaches to the environmental risk assessment for bees and other pollinators. We may participate together with the OACP Secretariat, the European Union and UNEP through a side event in the 5th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly. So we've submitted a proposal and we have not heard back whether it has been accepted. And regarding the 15th meeting of the COP to the CBD, as previously mentioned, we will organize a series of regional preparatory meetings, and we also intend to organize a side event. And while not mentioned here on the slide, we've also planned activities for the post-2020 if and when the post-2020 framework is adopted. And finally, we will have consultations with our regional partners and the CBD Secretariat to initiate the drafting of the cross-regional technical guidance on integrated agricultural systems for the sustainable management of biodiversity and ecosystem services. And this document is intended to help countries with the implementation of the post-2020 biodiversity framework. Next slide, please. This is it. So sorry for the issues there. I hope you did manage to see some of the slides.
Yes, we saw the slides. Thank you. No issue. It's difficult, and indeed I miss the times where we were all gathering in a big room and having coffee break. Speaking about the coffee break, we will have a short break, but before that, would you have any questions on the presentation? Christelle, you want to take the floor?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you, Keman, for your presentation. Notwithstanding some of the technical difficulties, I think we very much got the gist of the work that you've been able to accomplish, and of course noting that there have been some challenges, not just with the COVID-19, but clearly a higher order strategic arrangement between the FAO and the European Commission that will need to be sorted out, and hopefully it will be for everybody's sake. I just had a bit of a question, which is a sort of a slightly higher order question regards, because you mentioned COP15 as well as the post-2020 GBF a number of times in your presentation. And of course, we note that FAO and UNEP are the lead technical partners in terms of implementation of the MEA3 program, the ACP MEA3 program. And I just wanted to get a sense from you as to how often you have joint activities, to look at efficiencies and effectiveness. So joint activities at the regional level, or where you might be working in countries together, and on issues such as when you would have, for example, joint webinars and so on. So how hand in glove are the different components of this program, and how hand in glove does FAO and UNEP work together to deliver on the objectives? Bala may also want to answer as well, so I won't just leave it to you for that slightly sticky question. But I think it's important when we talk about synergies, not just with other programs, but also within the program itself. Thank you.
Thank you for raising this issue. Bala, would you like to respond first, or shall I?
Sure, maybe. Certainly, yes, I can start and you can complement Kima. Yes, actually, even when we were planning to organize the regional briefing sessions in preparation for the virtual SBSTA and the SBI meetings, we actually were in touch with FAO because, as you can understand, both for the SBSTA meeting and the SBI meetings, agricultural biodiversity has been on the agenda. But then because of the timeline issues and also because of the focal elements of the discussions during these events, we actually could not plan any joint event, which is, together as UNEP and FAO, but the inputs that were provided as a part of the presentations to the regions included the inputs from FAO in terms of their technical reports. For example, a substantive element of the discussion at SBSTA has been on soil biodiversity. So certainly we did pick up a lot of information from the FAO reports and planned it, but certainly your question, Crystal, actually adds a dimension to that, which is a kind of a nudge to say that I think we need to do more. So certainly we will sort of note it and we will make it not just by default, but by design as well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Balakrishna, for this. I would like to echo what you said. I think there are more opportunities to collaborate to this end, and the activities that we have undertaken had a very strong agricultural focus. So when I'm talking about CBD COP preparation events, I'm really referring to the agenda items at CBD COP that relate to the agricultural program of work of the Convention on Biological Diversity. And it also relates, the focus was also on the targets that are most relevant to biodiversity for food and agriculture. However, this being said, yes, we can strengthen our efforts there, and it definitely makes sense. And so thank you for raising this issue, and we'll definitely work on it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your response. I would also echo the conversation and confirm this is extremely important for us. It's part of the objective of the program, and it's also a strong policy guideline that we have at EU level with the Farm to Fork strategy. You remember that was adopted together with the biodiversity strategy, and efforts have to be put together if we want to have some impact. I see two requests for intervention. Savanya or Bala, do you want to react on this, or is it another point?
No, just one small point that I missed is that more specifically, this particular project is also a key intervention in the ongoing UNEP-FAO collaboration, as well as the new forthcoming MOU that is being signed between UNEP and FAO, where the discussions are still on. So the elements of this program related to aspects that are being implemented by FAO and implemented by UNEP are actually mainstreamed into that organizational setup as well already. Just I forgot to mention that, sorry about that, but just an additional point.
Thank you, clear. Stefania, would you like to take the floor, please?
Thank you, Aurélie, and good seeing you. Just to add to what Bala mentioned, at the sub-regional level in the Pacific, the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration has really strengthened our work with FAO because we are the designated leads, and we've been asked by the 4 UN country teams in the Pacific to come up with a joint roadmap on how we address the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. FAO and UNEP have been doing a joint stocktake of all of our activities in all three areas of work: waste, biodiversity, and climate change. And after that, then we'll come up with a more strategic framework for how we work, not only as a FAO and UNEP, but as the UN as a whole, together with our partners on the UN Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. The other thing is FAO signed, I think last month, an MOU with SPREP. Thank you.
Well, thank you. This is a very useful addition. Very pleased to hear that this collaboration is taking place well at the local level. Very important. So thank you, and let me also congratulate Kim Han for the presentation. And it's good to see that a lot of things are on track, and that you've been putting the right basis for basically deploying the activity on the ground. So we see that you have a large plan for activities for next year, and we're quite confident that you will be able to deliver. On the financial aspect, we can maybe cover bilaterally, but I think it's also something to do with Bala, but we can deal with that for sure. So if no further questions, we were supposed to have a short break now. I would propose that we have 10 minutes. So for Brussels time, I propose we convene back at 6:35. And for Nairobi time, it would be 8:35, if I'm not wrong. So just a short break to take some glass of water or fruits to continue the conversation, and we will be back together to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can see that you're back, or you're still here.
Yeah, I think should be there. Yeah.
We're going to start again for the second part of this session, which will be dedicated to the regional focus, state of play from the regions. I would like first to give the floor to the Africa region for the first update. Thank you.
Yes, early. I think in the region we have the Nairobi Convention as the
yes. Yeah. We start by the Nairobi Convention. It's there's two colleagues, Dixon and Terry. Sorry about not pronouncing the names properly, maybe. Yes, excellent.
Thank you. Yes, I have seen where I needed to press a button to unmute myself. My name is Mwangi Theuri. I'm a project officer at the Nairobi Convention Secretariat at UNEP. Thank you for the privilege to make a short presentation on progress in the implementation of the ACP MEAs 3 project program here at the Nairobi Convention. It's actually a privilege that we have some very good work that we'd like to mention as we share together. Now, for sure, the Nairobi Convention is a region that has 10 countries, from Somalia at the north of Africa, the Horn of Africa, as we call it, down to South Africa, encompassing Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, and South Africa, and also the island nations of Seychelles and Comoros, Madagascar, as well as Mauritius, and the island of Reunion, which is actually France. So there are 10 countries in that region, in our region, the Western Indian Ocean. And in this region, we are implementing the second objective of the MEAs program. This is on better management of coast and oceans, around 3-4 outputs. I would say 4 outputs on governance frameworks, on marine protected areas, on waste management, as well as raising awareness on what is happening in the region in terms of marine pollution. In that case, a few areas that we would like to make mention of is actually in the first output, where we're looking at governance frameworks. And one key area on governance frameworks is to bring about science that is important in any decision making. And this has been a series of meetings that have happened since March and ending in November, where countries have come together, experts have come together, and finally they have come up with decisions that are important for our understanding. And therefore it is important to take note that there's been a good process in coming up with governance frameworks that are important for the region. I'll be coming back to some of the decisions that are important at this time. Another important work that is crucial for the Western Indian Ocean is factoring biodiversity issues. We have a protocol on protected areas and world flora and fauna, and this protocol is a bit outdated. It's dated back in 1985, and we have new global processes and regional processes that require this protocol to be updated, to be amended. The work has already started. We have the first output of it, in which we know the areas that require updating and what needs to be updated, as well as the second area that we have just mentioned earlier, the emerging issues, scientific issues, policy issues that are important for decision making. They're coming from the partners in the region, as well as the countries themselves. And just this this November month, that is just last month, we have one report that has been outstanding for quite a long time on sharks and rays. It's an important report that needs to be added to the protocol. On reviewing the protocol, this report will be very important. And the support that has been called upon, the program to support the adoption of integrated coastal zone management protocol. This one is expected to happen together with the protocol concerning protected areas. This will happen in next year when we have been through with the review of the protocol on wood, flora and fauna. And then looking into the marine protected areas, it's just this year that we launched the Western Indian Ocean Marine Protected Areas Outlook to know how many marine protected areas are there. And then out of that, this program is implementing the recommendations of this report. It's a very good report for the Western Indian Ocean, for the first one on marine protected areas. And what has happened is to enable the resource managers in the marine protected areas already to begin to build their capacity on adaptive management, because we are looking forward into having marine protected areas that have a regional connectivity and they can speak to each other, particularly because of the conservation of biodiversity in the region. And this work has also brought about the network of the Western Indian Ocean Marine Protected Areas. It's a network that was launched the other day, just in June, and this has also enabled the work on marine protected areas to proceed. And this has brought again another effort to look into specifically at a local level some of the marine protected areas ecosystems, such as the coral reefs. These are important areas because of the challenges that the coral reefs are facing in the Western Indian Ocean. This is a work that has actually been brought to the project, to the program, to support the work of coral reefs at the regional level, but also at the national level, where a country like Comoros is establishing 4 marine protected areas. And then there's the third output on waste management, and here we're looking at waste management that has been mapped in the Western Indian Ocean and what countries are addressing. 2 main countries have requested support. The first one is Comoros, the islands of Comoros, and also the mainland Tanzania asking for support. Comoros is asking, can you help us to establish a marine litter strategy and action plan? We have already started that, and it is in the pipeline, and we expect by the end of the year 2022 that we'll have a marine litter strategy and an action plan for implementation in the Comoros, and if possible to test the case in one of the sites where waste management requires the action plan to be tested, as well as Tanzania. And Tanzania, this is a good partnership where the country is requesting that they can also develop a marine litter action plan that can be used in the country. This is a good work. We hope that again by the end of 2022, this action plan will be in place and tested in at least one local area to confirm that the action plan and the litter strategy is working. These are photos of Comoros where waste management is actually drawn just next to the ocean coastline, sometimes with the rollies, other times it's just a dumping, and that is an issue that is big, particularly in Comoros. And then the 4th area on awareness and outreach as an output. Here is where we have been communicating through the website, a web page dedicated to the project, as well as on the reporting of what is happening. sometimes when we have the opportunity, we have written some articles, and we are expecting to write another article later this month, an article on the project areas. The first article was looking at the review of the protected areas of flora, world flora and fauna. And for our case here, it is important to also mention the impact that the project, the program, has been mentioned, has created in the region. And the first one is, in fact, the joint efforts on capacity building for marine protected areas managers, the resource managers. And here we're only looking at building that capacity before we can come into a specific area and bring training to the marine protected areas resource managers. And of course, several meetings that have happened in the year 2021, with the culmination of some decisions that we're going to see just shortly that are relevant. We had the meeting of the Science to Policy, a dialogue that is important. This is the area that we were able to identify the emerging issues and what is priority at the scientific, at the technical, as well as at the policy level. And then the countries have come together, what we call the national focal points. They're represented by their national focal points, looking again into the recommendations coming from the scientific community and the partners. What is it that the countries are supposed to take action on? And then we ended up with some decisions that we'll see going forward. And again, at the level of the decisions, this is a meeting that has just happened 23rd to 25th of November last month, where the countries represented by their ministers of environment in Kenya, Seychelles, Madagascar, South Africa, the representatives of the ministers, as well as in France and Mozambique, all of these ones were present. And important work that has appeared out of this conference of parties is to identify the priorities of the ACP MEAs project in the Western Indian Ocean, and out of it, 7 decisions refer to the program. The review of the protocol concerning protected areas being acknowledged by the countries as an important element. Developing a regional ocean governance strategy, the country is saying this is an important area. Developing a regional action plan on addressing ocean acidification as an important regional effort that needs to be addressed. Promoting area-based planning tools like marine spatial planning to support the work that is going on blue economy, sustainable blue economy, as well as developing a regional monitoring, indicator monitoring framework for coastal and marine ecosystems. And this one has actually also been seen as an important area for the entire ecosystems, the Gulhaj and the lower Somali currents, those 2 ecosystems being requiring monitoring at the regional level, as well as the other decision on developing regional coastal marine water quality guidelines. That is something that has been left behind for quite some time, and the countries now can take it up and adopt these guidelines at the national level. And this is one area that we will be supporting continually, as well as the other area of marine litter that we have just mentioned in Comoros, in Tanzania, and the decision to promote science policy dialogues at the regional level as well as at the national level. The countries are saying now that this has been a very good effort for governance purposes. Let's also have it at the national level. Those are 7 decisions that the program has actually supported in the course of the year, and we're proud that we have such decisions. And in terms of gender actions, this is an important element because for the first area, it is to include at the demonstration activities. Here in this case, we're looking at Comoros Marine Litter Action Plan. And as we have said, it is to start by next month. It should be able to start. The document, the agreements are in the process of signature. This is where the document itself, the work that has been indicated, the country has said much of the cleaning exercise is actually done by women, youth, and it was pronounced clearly that this is one area that a great effort will be seen, particularly in reducing marine pollution from waste products that are entering the marine environment. This is actually a real work that the countries have indicated. And now, in terms of lessons learned, one area that you will notice has been the partnerships that have been growing. For example, in building capacity of marine protected areas resource managers, this has been a growing partnership between the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, the Southern African Development Community, the Swedish Water Management Agency, in the area of production of this report on sharks and rays, World Wildlife Conservation Society coming in. And then we're also looking into partnerships to enjoin, particularly in the ongoing work on ocean governance. One area that we have also identified great partnerships is on ocean acidification because of the research work that is required there, the area of area-based management tools in marine spatial planning, and the partnerships that we have been getting in addressing marine litter in the region. That one partnership, for example, is on the challenges, and it's on the marine litter, and that marine litter we have a partnership with the Global Program of Action for the Protection of the Marine Environment from land-based sources and activities. But there are challenges that we have also seen, and one of the major ones, and this is almost cutting across all our presentations, is on the disruptions that were brought about by COVID. All the meetings that were to be arranged this year, they have not happened physical. For example, the negotiations that is required for the protocol, we need face-to-face negotiations. These ones have not happened. They have actually been delayed, and we believe that soon we'll be able to meet and travel in the region. That has been something that is important, and out of that, the delays that we have seen. I would not want to look at the work plan in details of what we propose. It is actually, we would like to share the presentation after this in the areas that we have proposed at each quarter of 2022 and what is the expected output for each. So if you would allow me, I would like to just skip these work plans. They are actually for the activities up to the end of them, and it would take some time to to talk about all of them. The good thing is that there are expectations, and those expectations for the Western Indian Ocean, the Nairobi Convention area. The first thing, because of the disruptions, would request that the project steering committee would consider, in this case, a no-cost extension. Actually, the funds, we would not be asking for more funds rather than asking a no-cost extension because of the delay experienced. But there's something that possibly was not included in the program, where we would encourage exchange visits, where we visit one convention, see what they are doing, and see whether you can have some best practices to learn from there, and it becomes easier rather than starting from scratch. You can just transfer that practice or that lesson into this other area. And of course, this is an area that would like more support from the PSC, encouraging more collaboration. In this case, We are finding greater collaboration with the Global Program of Action, as mentioned earlier, in addressing marine pollution. And because of the marine protected areas, we have also found that other entities are interested in funding this work on marine protected areas. We have received some funding actually from one of the entities to support our work in marine protected areas in Comoros by looking at one of the ecosystems, the coral reefs. I wish to stop there and say thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very clear presentation. I will open the floor for questions. Any reactions, questions, compliments?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be very quick because I know that there are quite a number of other presentations to come, but just to thank you. Is it? I'm not even going to try to pronounce your name. Can you help me?
Yeah, use Mwangi. It's easier.
Okay, Mwangi. But thank you very much for your presentation. And what really kind of jumped out at me, you know, we're talking about synergies and looking for these opportunities, you know, in different programs and so on. And I just noted the marine protected area outlook that you mentioned. You know, a very rich source of information, and wanted to know who your key partners were in terms of who produced the MPA outlook. Noting, of course, that there's quite a large investment called the Biopharma program, and I noted that Bala talked about that. You know, the synergies with the IUCN, and as we know, Biopharma is the Biodiversity and Protected Areas Management Program. So I just wanted to know whether Biopharma was front and centre in some of that work. You know, just looking again at efficiencies and how we can build those synergies to implementing these MEAs and achieving the objectives of the MEAs. So that was really kind of like my main question. But I also was interested in your, you know, in your presentation around the ministerial meeting and the influence, you know, that you've been able to achieve in terms of the decisions coming out of the ministerial meeting. So again, I just really wanted to be able to find out how that is driven. You know, is it very much an ACP MEA 3? Is it very much kind of the Nairobi Convention Secretariat? And is it, if it is that, then is it a coordinated effort across many MEA, biodiversity, you know, conservation investments in the Western Indian Ocean component? And I would definitely support this idea of exchange visits. Whether they be between states parties or whether they be between conventions in the different regions, because I think that one can learn quite a lot from that. So thank you very much, Mwangi, for your presentation. Just a couple of questions, a few comments. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. You want to compliment?
Yes, I could give some good feedback here because it is important. The first important thing is the MPA outlook was actually produced by, I would say, a consortium of experts in marine protected areas, and the countries themselves are the ones that gave the okay, the political okay for this product. And then there were recommendations from this outlook, and the MEAs project is the one that picks up the recommendations. And the recommendations, the first one is capacity building. The second one was on representation, representative MPAs. And the third one was on enabling effective management of the MPAs, and one country has come clear to requesting for that support. It's a project, actually, the project was supported by a JEF, is a JEF project that actually initiated this work at the convention level, and then just was able to produce the MPA outlook, and then what is the recommendation, and this is where the MEAs project has come to again support now the recommendations of that work, and I think catalyze the countries to see how they can achieve 10% of their protected areas, marine EEZ, protected area 10%. With this global biodiversity framework, now it is 30 by 30, then how will the countries even make it? Some of them never made it to 10%, others made it to 30% like Seychelles, but how are the other countries going to make it? That is the new thinking now that is in the region. And ministerial meetings are actually the output one of the program, where we are supporting governance frameworks and protocols. And this was who would have supported this work. It's actually a big work. And the easier part of it, which we may be proud of, is that convening all the partners is a big consortium of partners. And because they're not coming physically, the project was able to spend a little amount to convene all of these ones for 3 days, a partners meeting. And then the partners again come again for the first round. It is science, the science from all the research institutions, and then you support the partners themselves. What is it they've been doing in the region, and what is it that has come out that they would like the countries to know? And then the third area is where you bring the countries themselves, their representatives, and they listen to what the partners are saying, and then they also say, we believe that these are important decisions. And then you take that one to the ministerial level, and at the regional level, the ministers agreed to most of the decisions. I was surprised that 7 decisions are actually activities that are related to the MEA's work. Of course, I would also like to support the exchange visits. I think the twinning arrangements have been there, but exchange visits, somebody commented here that would like to enjoy the sun in Fiji, which is quite good, but something that you learn on how others are addressing marine litter easily, and then you can bring it to your own context. And that is an area we will really need to encourage this. We don't have that budget actually included, but would like Cartagena, Caribbean, to visit the Western Indian Ocean. We would believe that Abidjan would be happy to see Western Indian Ocean visiting Abidjan Convention when they are looking at their protocols. Those are important areas. The other day, it was the round table in SPREP, and when you listen to what they are doing there, you'd almost want to go and grab everything and bring it to your region and just start implementing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speaking about other convention, I would propose that we move to the Abidjan Convention. There will certainly be cross-cutting issues to discuss for the various conventions. On our side, we are also, as the European Commission, working on a new ocean governance strategy. All what you said on the biodiversity protection resonates really well to our ears. I would be happy also to put you in touch with colleagues from delegations who are working on those issues to create more synergies. But please, I would like to move now to the Abidjan Convention and ask you please to keep your time minutes presentation so that we can have time for questions and keep the timing. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurélie. Thank you, Fiori, and congratulations for your presentation. We will have a lot to share. And just Ladu, if you can please share as your screen or project my presentation, please. While waiting for Ladu, I'm going to present quickly the Abidjan Convention. I know that we are already familiar with the Abidjan Convention. We are dealing with coastal and marine biodiversity from Mauritania to South Africa. Slide, please. Ladu. Okay, so 22 member countries and the 3 large marine ecosystems. Slide. We have started officially our activities only in March 21, almost 2 years late, and we organized an ownership workshop with experts to adapt the activities to the new situation, particularly because of the pandemic, the COVID-19, and local realities that changed between the time the program was drawn up and the start of the implementation of activities. We are also well advanced in the process of developing an additional protocol on MPAs, and here, Suri and Ilenia and Cartagena Convention, we will need your to share experience with you. I have already sent invitation for some of our workshops, and we will probably have to discuss on it. A working group has been established, and for this purpose, in partnership with organizations like PRCM. PRCM is the regional partnership for coastal and marine conservation, and RAMPAO, the West African Marine Protected Areas Network, and UACN. As part of the fight against plastic pollution, we organized a series of 19 webinars to develop a regional action plan against plastic pollution for the Abidjan Convention region. In the same framework, we obtained a grant from GIZ for the campaign for a global legally binding treaty against plastic pollution. Slide. As impact, we can mention the mobilization of all major actors in the sub-region around the Abidjan Convention, the signature between ICN and PRCM of a financing agreement to support the effort of the Abidjan Convention in the development of an additional protocol on MPA. The project will be presented at the PRCM from next year in Bissau, in Guinea. The creation, I mentioned also the creation of a community of practice that allows us to share experiences and avoid duplication while strengthening cooperation. This is invaluable in terms of efficiency and rational use of resources. I can mention also the production of a booklet for the development of a regional action plan to combat plastic pollution in the region. It will be published next year. With we developed it in collaboration with the African Marine West Network in South Africa. I mentioned also the mobilization of new partners and new funding, in particular with GIZ, WWF, and IUCN. Others, such as French GF, are willing to support the implementation of the additional protocol. To finish with this part, I mentioned expanding the network of partners of the Abidjan Convention and consolidating its position as a major partner in the management of the oceans and coasts in our region and around the Atlantic. Learned now, stakeholders, slide please. The stakeholders in the field of marine and coastal biodiversity conservation often rub shoulders without talking to each other. this is probably true in all the areas, not only in our area. Our discussions and the partnership we have formed have made it possible to pool available resources and create bridges for rational use of resources to some extent. This trend needs to be reinforced in the coming years. Slide, please. Thank you. Gender actions. During the implementation of the program, we ensured that participation in the activities was inclusive and gender sensitive. At the kickoff meeting, the master of ceremonies, the general reporter, and 3 out of 4 group chairs were women. To date, we did not receive any protest from the men. Slide, please. In terms of communication, we produced a teaser and a video to promote the program. We also produced communication tools such as agendas, leaflets, wikis, mugs, flyers, kakemonos, fans, conference folders, etc. The production of a video on the 40th anniversary of the Abidjan Convention. It's this year, since March of 2021. It will be projected next week at the 13th COP of the Abidjan Convention, for which you are invited. I hope you will join us. Finally, we have produced a video to support the campaign for a global legally binding treaty against the plastic pollution. Slide, please. Challenges now. The biggest challenge has been the recruitment of staff. the pace at which the coordinator was recruited significantly hampered the smooth implementation of activities. We propose to now to combine some activities to try to make up for the two years delay in the project to the Abidjan Convention area. I think this point joins the one raised by Theory and supported by Ilenia and the Cartagena Convention to know if it's possible to have no extension and no cost extension. But maybe we can discuss it. Another challenge is the project assistant has still not been recruited. This increases the workload of the coordinator and slows down the implementation of activities. But it seems that we are on the right track now. We expect the job offer to be published any moment. Finally, the budget that had been foreseen for the 2 posts was significantly below reality. We have proposed a revision of the budget to cover at least the remaining period from the original end date of the project, let's say by March 2024, subject to an extension at the end. Slide, please. For the year 2022, we will implement the following activities. For the result 2.1, we will promote and facilitate ratification, adoption, and implementation of the convention and the related protocols. We will develop a regional action plan against plastic pollution, improve the ocean governance through the implementation of an integrated coastal and ocean management policy, and the conservation and sustainable use of the marine biological diversity of the ADMD. So maybe we can develop it with the African Union Commission and the Nairobi Convention. We will also work on the guidelines for MPAs management, and on this we will need the experience, we need to learn from Cartagena Convention and the Nairobi Convention too. So let's develop the cooperation on this area too. And we will develop the addition protocols on MPAs and the regional network of MPAs and the guidelines for coastal tourism. Slide, please. For the result 2.3, plastic waste or marine waste, we will assist and support national processes for developing single-use plastic policy, support recycling efforts, maybe with the youth and some schools in the region. We are talking about it, how to implement it concretely. And for the last point, communication, we raise the profile of the Abidjan Convention and promote outcomes and results of the project. How to do it? We are thinking about creating a network of youth ambassadors of the Abidjan Convention region. Right? We will now, what are we expect from the steering committee? First, we expect the steering committee to approve the proposed new log frame and the corresponding budget. How? By correcting the difference between the initial budget and the basic budget for the staff, which means coordinator, assistant, and the staff time. Because, for example, our financial officer is working on the project and there is no staff time for him. We propose also the deletion of the activities for which no budget had been allocated. We propose also to merge some activities dealing with the same topic. For example, the legal framework on plastic pollution in the region and the ocean governance and international cooperation. We suggest to provide for the acquisition of equipment, for example, the computer. I have no computer from the project. So the same for the next, the coming staff. And finally, we propose to rebalance the budget items while maintaining the activities and expected results. We will maintain the same activities, the same expected results, but just to work on the budget to rebalance it. Slide, please. And this is the last one. We suggest developing cooperation between the stakeholders, and this point has been raised by the theory again. Thank you. For example, I mentioned the MPAs. We are developing a protocol, and we know that the Nairobi Convention has a protocol, and we have also received the proposition of support of assistance from the Cartagena Convention. So we welcome it, and one thing, sorry. So we welcome it, and let's just develop it. So the same for the regional action plan against the plastic pollution or the management of APAs, etc. Last point, we have developed a resource center, and we will be launching it next year. And we have already discussed this point with the African Commission and the Nairobi Commission. Is it possible to work together, for example, to facilitate cooperation with the African Commission to develop our activities, to collect the data, and to share them with our public? This is a point I raised here, and I would like, if possible, to discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation, very clear. Before opening the floor, I will, of course, thank you for your suggestions. The project steering committee will look at them and of course, come back to you. Certainly a good idea to work with the Nairobi Convention, since we see that you're tackling similar issues and challenges. Would anyone have comments or questions, please?
Chair, if you can give me a second.
Sure, please.
Thank you so much. Peter Wekesa from the OACPS, and just to thank you, Ablai, for the very clear presentation. I have noted quite clearly that you have taken to serious action the existing partnerships that are working with you in the region. And I just want to also encourage you to, since you are working on marine protected areas, that the biopharma project, which is also working in the region, you probably would want to establish contacts as they are working on certain areas which might also be linking to the marine protected areas in the region. Or in fact, you can actually work with them to improve the region observatory that is being developed as a repository of knowledge and information on marine protected or generally protected area management. So that's just one suggestion that you may want to have a look at. And I also noted that the delay in recruitment, I don't know why. Obviously, it has caused quite a bit of your actions, quite a bit of delays. In fact, the year one activities have not been fully implemented. Of course, I see you put some proposals on how you want to catch up in the second year, which is quite encouraging. On the specific issue that I probably wanted to ask on the improving ocean governance, I noted that there was a suggestion to work on areas beyond national jurisdiction, and I would just maybe appreciate some specific activities in the area. Are you talking of supporting member states in the ongoing negotiations in New York, or what specific actions that you are working on in this respect? And lastly, if you could also, because I don't have full information regarding the Abidjan Convention, how many member states have actually ratified? And because you say one of the activities is actually to promote the ratification of the convention amongst the member states, just for my information. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Really relevant indeed. Abdullah, would you want to respond, please?
Thank you. And I will just need clarification about, you mentioned an organization. You said Bamako or Basel? For the MPA.
Biopharma, sorry. I'm really sorry. Biopharma is a project being implemented in the OACPS countries by IUCN. And they have, yes, you might have heard of them. Yes.
Yeah, no, I know they are in meeting in Abidjan, and I will receive them Friday night for dinner.
Great, yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. I thank you for your support and to support us for the how to catch up the delay. And I know that we can count on our partners and our financial partners to help us to catch up on this. And for the ADNGs, we are working with Strong High Seas to strengthen. We organize some activities like workshops to help African countries, the Abidjan Convention region countries, to develop their skills to negotiate. And the first step maybe is to know what is dealing, what are you talking about in this negotiation in New York. It's not clear for most of the countries. And we have another point. It will be to do not be kept behind when it will be a question to negotiate about the genetic resources in these areas. So this is maybe we will be developing a guideline for the genetic resources in the region and beyond the national areas. This is maybe the two activities we are doing related to the ABNG. Not a lot of things, but maybe to start, we do not have resources that including human resources to really go on this field. So for the moment, we are just going to develop in cooperation with our partners, Strong High Seas, develop the national skills and to develop this guideline. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your response. I see that Bala would like to comment. Bala, maybe on the cooperation, since you've been very good at putting people together.
Thank you, Aurelie. No, this is just more related to the question from Peter about the ABNJ discussions. Of course, the program actually is certainly keen, essentially through the regional SEAS programs, to contribute to the ongoing discussions. But then, honestly, to an extent, we also need to be a little careful from the institutional perspective as well, because as you can understand, of the 4 regional SEAS conventions that we are working on, 3 of them are hosted by UNEP, Abidjan, Nairobi, and the Cartagena Convention. And early this year, I was very keen to engage in terms of capacity building, awareness raising, and participation in the ABNJ discussions. Wanted to get a set of experts who are negotiating this to basically brief on what is forthcoming and all that, including from IUCN and the specialist group and all that. But then institutionally, UNEP actually is a little bit more cautious in terms of that engagement, because from the process of the negotiations, very clearly member states from, this is related to the discussions under the ABNJ, member states from Africa and the Caribbean have very clearly said that no, actually UNEP, we will come back as and when we require an input, so you please be observing what is happening, and then be there when we call you to provide your inputs. Whereas with Pacific countries, we realize that countries are more willing to engage with UNEP. So essentially, even though under this program we have an intention and an interest to support activities related to ABNJ, we also need to be a little careful about the political dimension of UNEP being a part of that discussion, and where the member states under the ABNJ discussions would like UNEP to come in and basically be sitting there observing what is happening. Personally, for me, I'm following the discussions on ABNJ. I'm also a part of the UNEP group working on this. So we will try and manage to the extent possible where we can provide inputs. But certainly it is something which personally and through the program we are interested, but we're just finding the spaces to start working on that. But we will certainly prioritize in the months to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you very much. I see that Stefania, you wanted to.
Thank you. Thank you, Aurelie. I just wanted to add to Bala's comment. Sometimes it's easier for us in the sub-regional UNEP offices to engage. We have a bit more latitude, either directly or through the UNCTs that we're members of. I think in the past we've channeled things through here when it's been difficult to do from headquarters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to complement, I can see that indeed there would be several issues where maybe the conventions could gather and exchange practices and lessons learned on plastic, on ocean governance, and potentially on the ABNG if compatible with countries' expectations. It's the 3 areas are very interesting for us as EU. And so we will be happy also to participate.
But I need it for work.
There's a mic which is open. I'm going to try to close it. Christelle, did you want to comment or to add something, please?
Just a quick addition, and thank you for all of the comments regards ABNJ. But I agree with you, Aurelie, that possibly, and this is where these sort of exchanges between the regions becomes quite important. I think, as Zephaniah mentioned, in the Pacific has engaged quite actively in the ABNJ negotiations, and those member states have been supported by a consortium of experts. So it's been very, very deliberate and quite strategic. And I think that this is where, as we look at ocean governance, many different instruments, how do we, as the OACPS group of member states across these three regions, actually work together and exchange so that we can, one, influence multilateral processes, but at the same time ensure that we are able to deliver on the commitments, that we have under the various instruments that we've signed and ratified. So I think on ABNJ, the Pacific probably does have some things to offer in terms of its approach and its very active engagement in the negotiations, which, as we know, are well underway and quite well advanced. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amahika, you want to complement, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. I just wanted to say from the CARICOM point of view and to sort of support what was said by UNEP from the Pacific. CARICOM is also very engaged in the BBNJ negotiations. We were there from the time it was a preparatory committee. Members of CARICOM have actually chaired the process. So we had a well-working mechanism that was in place where we brought in the expertise of many international partners, including as well as our regional entities. So we have a mechanism that includes the member states, our regional fisheries mechanism, and our University of the West Indies, and then we bring in expertise as needed. And when we have our training sessions as well, we do invite the regional sub-office of UNEP, which is Chris Sunday, to participate and to provide expert advice. We actually will be having a session coming up for regional organizations, dialogue on the package dealing with capacity building. So it's just to say that we do draw on UNEP, but it will be within the sub-regional context and in terms of what specific areas we're looking at, whether it's marine genetic resources, capacity building, ABMAs. So, we bring in experts as required. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot for this compliment. Thank you, Abdoulaye. I propose we close this point and we move to the presentation from the African Union, please.
If you allow,
yes.
I'd like to comment because unfortunately, I do not see colleagues from African Union Commission joining the meeting. But if you allow, I will just give you a very quick update in terms of where we are.
Perfect.
Is it okay? Yeah, sure. Okay, thanks. There's been some delays in terms of signing the partnership agreement with the African Union Commission, but on the 16th of September, we actually managed to get the signatures of both UNEP and the African Union Commission on the partnership agreement, which was certainly a very welcome move, both from UNEP side and I'm sure from the project side, in terms of a very important partner coming on board to effectively look at implementation. And subsequently, we have engaged with the focal persons at the African Union Commission, asking for dates and times for having a kickoff and inception meeting so that we can start rolling out the program implementation. But unfortunately, there's been some challenges internally for them to confirm the date and time. We are working with them, but given the current situation also in Addis, the political and other related issues, there's been some elements of delays. But be assured that from UNEP we're pushing as much as possible to get them on board and kickstart the activities, because it's a large region, a very influential and impactful region to get the outcomes and implement the ACP MEAs 3 program. But also our colleagues who is actually online with us, Margaret Uduk, who is our regional focal person from UNEP sitting in the Addis Ababa office, is also constantly in touch with colleagues in terms of expediting both the inception meeting and also the implementation. And sometime tomorrow at the concluding session, I'll also make some suggestions for consideration by the project steering committee, given some of these delays, because we are almost entering the 3rd year of the implementation. And we need to get up to speed with implementing activities in Africa. But having said that, from UNEP, we tried to fill the gap. In the meantime, several activities that UNEP supported on communication and outreach. I mentioned about the Africa Environmental Journalist Network, where we actually have collaborated with them on a number of briefing sessions, resulting in several both French and English media reports. And we even had the environment minister from DRC Congo join that meeting, who herself has a background in media and journalism. So she was very keen. So she joined, and we will continue that collaboration with them. Having said that, we also work with the Africa Group of Negotiators, which is actually a formal mechanism set up by the AMSEN, the Africa Ministerial Forum on Environment, to follow the discussions related to the global biodiversity framework and the post-2020 related aspects of it. We have colleagues from the Africa Regional Office who are with us on this particular call. We are working through them in terms of supporting the Africa Group of Negotiators. And again, tomorrow at the concluding session, I've got a few points for consideration in terms of strengthening the support for the Africa Group of Negotiators, because they are looking for some technical support and also from strategic support, including some negotiation training in preparation for the CBD COP15. Having said that, we actually are also now working with the IGAD countries, as I mentioned before, which is related to the Africa region, including with the regional, the IGAD Secretariat, and also the national focal points in terms of implementing some of the national workshops and activities on issues related to biodiversity MEAs, as well as the chemicals and base MEAs. And the reports are ready for launch, which will basically be guiding the inputs from the IGAD countries. And very interestingly, because the IGAD countries also participate in these processes, not just as IGAD, but also as East Africa, as also as Africa as a region together. The particular activity of reaching out to IGAD countries was extremely helpful, because that also provided a kind of a sub-regional platform for the 8 countries in the region to come together, where we were able to work with the national focal points in prioritizing their inputs to the discussions of the post-2020 framework, as well as with the chemicals related COP MEA related activities as well. So essentially, to quickly sum up, we are trying to work as quickly as possible with the African Union Commission in expediting the beginning the implementation of the program, but certainly there are some delays in terms of implementation. Thank you very much, Aruli.
Thank you very much, Bala. Thank you for stepping up and quickly updating us. Thanks to you, we gained a bit of time. But no, on the substance, of course, we strongly regret this delay, but we've been in touch with you on that, so we are aware of the situation. We saw that in your reporting documents, you really reflected that, and you mentioned the activities that you were able to develop on your site. So I have no additional comments, but if you need support for the upcoming phases, meaning inception and follow-up, we're happy to support.
Sure, certainly. Thanks, Aruli. Thank you very much.
I see there's a request. Margaret, you would like to take the floor? Please.
Thank you, Aurelie. I just want to add on to what Bala said. My name is Margaret Uduk. I'm UNEP OIC for UNEP Addis Ababa Liaison Office, and liaising very closely with the African Union Commission. I just want to add that on top of all this, the Commission went through a restructuring, which really further delayed everything. And what we have is that they're very supportive of implementing the project. They have indicated that they would want to have the Commission itself capacitated, and they're looking at establishing, the different structures to scale up, the outcomes of the project into policy that can go up to the summit level, which I think is really something that is key. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you for this positive feedback. I would propose that we move to FAO, the presentation of activities covering Africa, please.
I'm failing to unmute myself. Okay, thank you, Aurelie. Good, thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good evening, colleagues. I'm honored to be making this presentation on behalf of FAO for the Africa region. If you allow me, I have turned on my video. I'm getting an error message that my internet is not stable.
Evie, you cut the video, but we don't hear you anymore.
Okay.
Ah, you're back.
So
Good.
I'm with this presentation on behalf of both of us. I have a colleague. Hello. So I'm making this presentation on behalf of Anna, who's responsible for West. I'm responsible for East and Southern Africa. So this is all right, Aurelie, I'll proceed. So just like I've said, for FAO, the ACP MEAs 3 activities are being undertaken in East and Southern Africa, as well as West Africa. And we have 4 focus countries that have been, hello, can you hear me? Can I proceed? I'm getting an error message.
It's not super good, but we can hear you.
Taking my headsets. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, Aurelie?
Evie, I can hear you, yes.
I'll try to take it again. So as just mentioned, we have 2 regional coordinators.
Sorry for my dropping.
Okay, so I'll proceed. And please don't hesitate to let me know if you can't hear me.
Ivy, we can't see your presentation.
Okay, I'll try screening. It must be unstable internet from my side. I'll try share my screen again.
Would you like me to say it for you?
Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, please. Just interact. So we have 4 focus countries for intensified support. These are Niger, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe. And responsible at regional level, we have the 2 regional coordinators, myself and my colleague Stefano, who's responsible for West Africa. And for each of the 4 focus countries, we have national coordinators. And the model that we're following for ACP MEAs 3 is collaborating with, namely, Southern African Development Community and the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and hopefully also through the African Union, once we have finalized the agreements with them, we'll establish some form of formal collaboration with the African Union. And we also aim to reach out to several scale-out countries in the Africa region, namely Burkina Faso, Burundi, Kenya, Lesotho, Malawi, Mali, Senegal, South Sudan, Uganda, and Zambia. And we hope as we collaborate better with the African Union, we can reach out to even more countries on the African continent. So getting to the activity snapshots, I'll start off with Niger for outputs 1 and 2. Just to recap from this we had under the FAO ACP MEAs 3.
Sorry, Ivy, no change of your slides.
Slides. I've asked Kim, I'm allowing Kim to share my slides.
Yes, we
Kim,
are
are
just
you
on
able to move?
Let me say from my side.
Yeah, Lado, if you can help. Yeah,
Slides
please, Lado.
now
Yeah.
share outputs 1 and 2. Sure. So out, okay. Any of my colleagues can help me to move the slides?
Yes, I've requested for control, Ivy.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
I'm
I can
actually
see
from
the
UNEP
slides.
doing it. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
It's working. You're on Niger.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start to... Yes, thank you. Just to recap on what outputs were use and conservation of biodiversity and the sound management of chemicals in agricultural policies. Output 2 is on enhanced field implementation of measures for the sustainable use of and conservation biodiversity, as well as sound management of chemicals in agriculture. So I'm bringing to outputs activity snap for Niger, a consultant work for biodiversity and pest management, and also to develop and finally start this be done, and a multi-sectoral project technical unit PTU has been instituted. Inception workshop for the project in Niger was held in April 2021. It's been planned in 5 regions of Niger in collaboration with the Directorate of Extension Services for Technology Transfer. Next slide, please. Thank you. And meetings have been held with various institutions to define collaboration and letters of agreements content, and to LOAs under signature with the National Environment Council for Sustainable Development. And for capacity building on the chemical conventions, these are the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions. An LOA has been signed with the Directorate for Environment and Sustainable Development. And for capacity building and creation of non-timber forest products and creation of non-timber forest product enterprises, youths and women, and LOA has been developed or has been elaborated with the Directorate for water and forests. And the fourth LOA is on training on pesticide risk reduction and pest management. And this is to be signed with the Plant Protection Directorate under the Ministry. And finally, for training on best agroecological practices and biopesticides and manufacturing, biopesticide use and manufacturing, the LOA form of Niger, National Platform of Niger Farmers. Next slide.
You're breaking up.
Sorry, the slide hasn't moved from my side.
It's very hard to hear. The connection is not good. So I don't know if Stefano wants to step in or if we.
Okay, please hold on.
Stefano, would you like to try to make it try?
Is it already? Is it any better now?
Looks like it is better. Yeah.
Okay, I've just switched service providers, but please let me know if the problem persists. Then I'll ask Stefano to take over.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to activity snapshots for Rwanda. Consultative meetings were held and the ACP MEAs 3 project was introduced to stakeholders and a national work plan was elaborated. And we have completed a preliminary agro-biodiversity policy stock-taking exercise and policy gap analysis. And from this, a baseline report has been drafted and the work was completed in February 2021. Since then, a multi-sectoral project technical unit has also been constituted. And following that, an Inception workshop was held and the work plan validated. A story was published on the FAO website covering the Inception workshop and also had nuggets of the work plan that had been validated, and this was in May 2021. A national consultant has been recruited to lead activities on reduction of highly hazardous pesticide risks, and the activities being undertaken include identification, risk and needs assessment, and elaboration of a draft mitigation plan. And I'm happy to report that to date we have a draft list of highly hazardous pesticides that are being used in Rwanda. Additionally, a national consultant has been recruited and work is ongoing for season-long farmer field school refresher training of trainers. And so far, 126 women and 84 men have been trained in the 6 selected districts where we have farmer field schools. So in total, we have 6 farmer field schools in these different districts. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now moving on to Tanzania outputs for outputs 1 and 2. Meetings have been conducted with stakeholders from different sectors to introduce the project in 6 districts. A national draft work plan was elaborated. Of the stakeholders that were consulted, 29% were women. Following that, a multi-sectoral 15-member project technical unit, PTU, was constituted. And out of these 15, 5 were women. Following that, an Inception workshop was convened in April 2021, during which the work plan was validated. A letter of agreement has been signed with the Tropical Pesticides Research Institute for highly hazardous pesticide risk reduction, and work is ongoing. And I'm happy again to report that the list of highly hazardous pesticides being used in Tanzania has been updated. And I say updated because previously we did some work with the same institution under ACP MEAs too. And we have national surveys conducted for needs and risk assessment, focusing on these highly hazardous pesticides. As mentioned by Kim, we have recruited a videographer, and shooting was recently completed to capture baselines on pesticide management and agro-ecosystem production practices that are to be promoted under the project. And of the 7 farmers interviewed during shooting of this video, 3 were women. Thank you. If I could have the next slide. Now moving on to the 4th focus country for the Africa region, which is Zimbabwe. Consultation meetings with stakeholders from different sectors were held to introduce the project in 6 districts, and a draft national work plan was elaborated. And of the people consulted, 33 were men and 20 were women. A preliminary agro-biodiversity policy taking exercise was completed, and this also included policy gap analysis, and subsequent to that, a baseline report was drafted, and this was done in January 2021. A multi-sectoral project technical unit has also been constituted, like in the other focus countries. And for Zimbabwe specifically, out of the PTU, we have 4 thematic working groups that have been created, and these are focusing respectively on policy development, farmer field schools, highly hazardous pesticides, and lastly, research and development, and they're spearheading the work at national level. A national Inception workshop was held and work plan validated in April 2021 for Zimbabwe. Since then, there have been a series of PTU and working group meetings held and detailed action plans elaborated, and work is underway. For research and development, a letter of agreement has been signed with the Department of Research and Specialist Services to lead all the work to develop agro-ecosystem best practices. All the work to do with research and development under ACP MEAs 3 activities for Zimbabwe are being led by this research and development technical working group. 9 farmer field schools have been established in 3 districts, all with at least 48% female participation. In some of the farmer field schools, we have female participation as high as 82%. At the moment, we have another letter of agreement that has been drafted for agrobiodiversity policy work, and it will be finalized once the resources are available. Also in Zimbabwe, the list of highly hazardous pesticides has been updated in close collaboration with a smaller technical cooperation project funded by FAO. And through the collaborative work, national surveys have been conducted, and work is in progress to elaborate a mitigation plan for the highly hazardous pesticides that have been identified. Next slide, please. Now we're moving on to regional level activities. I'll start off with activities in East Africa. The activity snapshot for East Africa. So the ACP MEAs 3 program was introduced to the EAC Secretariat again. I say again because we're collaborating with EAC Secretariat in ACP MEAs 2. And we also introduced the program to FAO Sub-Regional Office for Eastern Africa. And in collaboration with the EAC Secretariat, elaborated the regional work plan. Since then, to implement the joint work plan, we've had meetings with the Center for Pesticide Suicide Prevention, University of Edinburgh, which they want to collaborate with FAO for finalization of the East African Community Regional Strategy on Highly Hazardous Pesticides. And since then, a roadmap has been elaborated, including terms of reference for the Highly Hazardous Pesticide Technical Working Group to spearhead the work on highly hazardous pesticides, focusing on elaboration of this regional strategy in the EAC. Members of the Technical Working Group will be drawn from the EAC partner states. And another good progress that we've made is the recruitment of international consultants by FAO and the Center for Pesticide Suicide Prevention, respectively, for drafting the regional HHP strategy in close collaboration with the Technical Working Group, which is really leading the work. So we having the Technical Working Group leading the work for ownership within the East African community. Next slide, please. Thank you. Now moving to Southern Africa, and sorry, I forgot to mention that for the regional level activities, I'm reporting on Output 3. And just to remind all of us, Output 3 is on enhanced regional collaboration and dissemination of best policies and practices across the focus and scale out countries. So in Southern Africa, again, as we did in East African community, we introduced ACP MEAs 3 to the SADC Secretariat and the FAO Sub-Regional Office for Southern Africa, and work plans were elaborated for the regional work. The regional work plan was also incorporated into the SADC FAO joint work plan, so there's a lot of ownership at sub-regional level for the ACP MEAs 3 work. And the work plan includes support to SADC for support to revise the regional biodiversity strategic action plan as it relates to agriculture. And recently we convened a SADC preparatory webinar for the CBD COP15, and this was on the 26th of November, and we had 64 participants. The webinar really was a preparatory meeting, like I said, for the CBD COP15 and this new draft post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. And the webinar really provided a very good platform for capacity building, awareness raising, and promoting synergies across the relevant MEAs. It also brought together focal points of the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, the Commission on Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, the Trans-Frontier Conservation Areas in Southern Africa, as well as the SADC Plant Genetic Resources Network. And main objective was to build a shared understanding of the biodiversity for food and agriculture across the relevant MEAs. And we still in SADC, we continue work through the Southern African Pesticide Regulators Forum, SAPRE, for the implementation of the SADC Regional Guidelines on Pesticide Management that were developed under ACP MEAs 2. In addition, there's ongoing collaboration between the MEAs program and the SADC Secretariat, the Center for Pesticide Suicide Prevention, University of Cape Town, and the Swedish Chemicals Agency, CHEMI, to support the Southern African Pesticide Regulators Forum to finalize the SADC regional strategy on highly hazardous pesticides. And again, for SADC, there is a technical working group that is spearheading this work, and this is mainly for ownership. We will provide a consultant in the next work plan to support this work. But at the moment, all the work is being led by the technical working group from SAPREF with technical support from the mentioned organizations. Next slide, please. Moving on to regional level activities for West Africa. So consultative meetings were held to define activities for scaling up Niger's experience on agroecology across other West African countries through the National Platform of Farmers of Niger. And consultative meetings were held to define processes to support the development and review of national policies of West African countries to facilitate agroecological transition in collaboration with CIRAD, which is the French Agricultural Research and Cooperation Organization. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so for impact, we've just done one slide focusing on all the 4 focus countries and the regional level activities. So the first one really is on fostering cross-sectoral information sharing and collaboration with civil society, as well as public and private sector actors. For example, through the multi-stakeholder consultations, the constitution of the project technical units, as well as through synergies with ongoing or just ended programs. I just mentioned the FAO-funded technical cooperation project under which we've been doing highly hazardous pesticide risk reduction work in Zimbabwe, and collaboration with other institutions such as the University of Cape Town, the Center for Pesticide Prevention, Pesticide Suicide Prevention, Swedish Chemical Agency, and also through specific activities, just bringing together different stakeholders from different sectors. A case in point is the just ended SADC CBD webinar. I highlighted to you the focal points that we managed to bring together for this webinar. So for us, really, we take it as impact that has been created in the sub-regions and in the focus countries. Another area where impact has been created is on strengthened collaboration and leveraging support and expertise of regional institutions such as the African Union, the East African Community, ECOWAS, SADC, and SAPREF, the Southern African Pesticide Regulators Forum. Also, enhancement of national and regional capacities for pesticide management. I've just highlighted the ongoing work in elaboration of regional strategies on highly hazardous pesticides, and also the national work that is going on HHP risk reduction in all the focus countries. Another area where impact has been created is on raising awareness on the risks of highly hazardous pesticides, as well as threats of unsustainable production practices to ecosystems and human health. And finally, impact has been generated through facilitating joint action with national and regional MEAs partners. I've already mentioned that. Sorry, it's repetition on my part. We can move forward. Now on gender equality and the empowerment of women and youth, we are intentionally integrating gender perspectives at different stages of work planning and implementation of activities, including stakeholder analysis to address gender inequalities and generate gender disaggregated data. I'm sure you picked from the activity snapshots that I tried as far as possible to provide gender disaggregated data. We also paying special attention to gender dynamics that impact on production, access to plant genetic resources for food and agriculture, markets, as well as pesticide risk reduction. And just to highlight that men, women, and children are particularly vulnerable to highly hazardous pesticides. So we are intentionally including women, youths, and children in the work that we're doing at national and regional level to address highly hazardous pesticides. And also to incorporate specific reference to the inclusion of women and youth in alignment with the FAO, the national and regional gender policies, as well as the different MEAs provisions on gender policies. So this is what we're doing in terms of gender equality and empowerment of women and youth. Next slide, please.
Maybe I will
now,
invite you to go through it a bit quickly so that we can keep the timing, please. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. And for the work plan for the next period at national level, I will not read all the points, but we will provide policy and technical assistance to the governments to integrate ecosystem best practices and measures into national agricultural policies. We will continue with the implementation of the national pesticide risk reduction plans and phase out highly hazardous pesticides and promote safe alternatives. We will continue to build the institutional and technical capacities to promote policies and ecosystem best practices. And we will also strengthen extension services and extension curricula to institutionalize the adoption of ecosystem best practices and approaches. And I think I need to highlight that we will have activities that will link producers to public and private economic incentives, including existing sustainable value chain initiatives. Next slide, please. At regional level, we will continue with all the work that I've already highlighted, and we will go ahead and scale out best policy initiatives and good agricultural practices in the sub-region. I encourage you as much as you can, if you can go over the different points that are listed in the slides. And we will continue with the series of webinars on strengthening the preparation and implementation of CBD, and particularly preparation of COP15 and implementation of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. We will support the revision of the EAC and SADC regional biodiversity strategies and action plans in the context of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and also provide training to pesticide regulators on fast-track registration of biological pesticides. Thank you. Next slide, please. And just to be specific, for regional level activities for West Africa, to fine-tune the work plan and start activities in pilot countries, and for scaling Niger's experience on agroecology in West Africa, and also to define the work plans and pilot countries with the work to be done with CIRAD to support national policies on agroecological transition in West Africa. Next slide, please. All right, thank you. I apologize for rushing through. It was a tall order to condense information for 4 focus countries and 3 sub-regions in a short presentation, but I hope you managed to get the gist of what we've done and what we plan to do. In terms of the challenges, lessons learned, communication plan is the same as presented by Kiman. So we decided to skip that in this particular presentation, appreciating it was already long enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Evie. It's a challenge. Huh? There's a lot to be presented and only 10 minutes for the presentation. So sorry about that. We have to do a bit of marathon. But no, it was very clear and we got the full overview. I will leave the floor for questions, if any.
Thank you.
If there's no, yes, please. Lewis.
Thank you. My name is Lewis Kavagi. I work with UNEP in the Africa office, and it's a pleasure to be here. Some of my comments Bala mentioned, and he will be presenting some recommendations tomorrow. I just want to pick from there. I actually am supporting the African group of negotiators on biodiversity. And I'm very impressed to hear what has been presented by FAO Ivy, especially regarding supporting the sub-regions to prepare for COP15. And also relating this to the question that Orella, you posed at the beginning. I think it was you who posed at the beginning on the collaboration between UNEP and FAO. I think that in this particular aspect, there is a great opportunity for collaboration between UNEP and FAO, in the sense that the African Group of Negotiators is the body that is now formally coordinating African position when it comes to preparations for COP15 and the different streams of work. For example, agrobiodiversity, as mentioned by Ivy, could be pieced together so that we are talking to the same community who are actively engaging in the negotiations going forward. So this is one area I would like to invite Ivy and the FAO colleagues to, maybe after this with the bilateral or something like that. But this is one aspect that we could closely collaborate together in supporting the African group from a CBD perspective. Having mentioned that, it's important as also relating to plant genetic resources. It's one of the main issues that the African Group of Negotiators has been taking into consideration going forward, and thinking in terms of how do we create the linkages, especially for the COP15. What I've heard the African Group of Negotiators talk about is the access and benefit sharing point of view is important to them. And so the input in preparation for COPs from FAO point of view and UNEP point of view and other partners' point of view will be important. But what I would recommend going forward is if we can come together to speak to the same community that is engaging or directing the engagement with the COP process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is indeed very much welcome. I have two hands. So Kim Han, please.
Thank you, Aurélie. I just want to quickly react on the last comment. And thank you for reaching out. I think we will definitely do so. Regarding the first about the communities we have involved, so the African Group of Negotiators was actually there. So just to clarify that that they were involved in the organization of this event. And regarding the plant genetic resources in particular, so this event that we organized was a first of a series, and we are planning to have thematic specific webinars in preparation of COP15, including a webinar on plant genetic resources, and we are we have had discussions on this with the Treaty Secretariat and the CBD Secretariat, and so I just wanted to reassure you that in view of you reaching out as well, I think we should involve you in these discussions from now on, and I would think that we very much welcome also your participation in organizing these future events. So thank you again, and I think we have a lot of areas where we can work together.
Thank you very much. And indeed, I think this is important. A lot of you mentioned the COP15 part 2. Some of the meetings have been postponed, and we hope that we keep the momentum high for this COP. We know that there's been some kind of divide between partner country, developing countries, and some more developed countries on some issues. And we are very eager to look at how to better explain what we propose. I inform you that we are, for example, doubling our funds for biodiversity, and we will deploy many programs to support our partners. So we're happy also to join forces with you on better explaining Europe's ambitions, and also explaining to partners that we are here to support. Christel, you will maybe take the floor, but I have another request from Wikisa, but this is not your name, huh?
Yes, no,